Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone, where the undead come to life. In today's episode, we're diving into the heart-pounding adventure, Zombie Safari. Imagine a world where the thrill of a safari isn't chasing lions or elephants, but facing reanimated corpses up close. In a theme park designed to contain the living dead, something goes terribly wrong. The fences fail, the undead escape, and survival becomes a deadly game. Join us as we explore this high-stakes adventure and witness what happens when a zombie park turns into a nightmare. Buckle up, this is Zombie Safari.
It was a crisp, cool afternoon, and the sprawling, state-of-the-art zombie safari park buzzed with excitement. Nestled in the heart of the African savanna, this theme park had captured the world's attention by offering thrill-seekers a close-up view of reanimated corpses. Billed as the most daring adventure on Earth, the park had been engineered to safely contain hordes of the undead within electrified fences, offering tourists an experience like no other, a safari to observe zombies in their natural, albeit artificial, habitat. Riley Grant, a seasoned adventure enthusiast, leaned against the railing of the open-air safari jeep, scanning the horizon. Behind her, her best friend and fellow adrenaline junkie, Marcus, fiddled with his camera, his nervous energy apparent. The park had only been open for a few months, and already rumors circulated about mishaps, minor breaches, a few close calls. But nothing major. Yet. You excited or terrified? Marcus asked, a crooked grin on his face. A little of both, Riley replied, watching the sun dip toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the savanna. In the distance, the park's massive steel gates shimmered. Beyond them lay Sector Z, where the zombies roamed freely. We've been on crazy adventures before, but this feels different. Before Marcus could reply, their tour guide, a burly man named Carl, who had the air of someone who had seen far too much, started up the jeep's engine. Carl's eyes had a perpetual wariness, as if he knew something none of the tourists did. "All right, folks," Carl announced in his gruff voice, "we're heading into Sector Z. The fences are high, the barriers are strong, but remember, you stay in the jeep. No exceptions. These things may not be fast, but if they get close, you're in trouble." Riley and Marcus exchanged excited glances. The engine roared to life, and the jeep lurched forward, joining a caravan of other vehicles heading toward the sector's gates. The drive through the park was surreal. Pastures that had once housed exotic animals now served as pens for the undead. The zombies lumbered aimlessly across the dry, cracked earth, their gray flesh hanging loosely from their bones. From the safety of the jeep, the tourists scoffed, snapped photos, and marveled at how close they could get to these once human creatures. Riley's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and danger. As they crossed the threshold into Sector Z, the true scale of the park became apparent. The terrain was vast, with dense brush and large boulders scattered across the landscape. The electric fences stretched for miles, ensuring that the zombies remained contained, but Riley couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Suddenly, Marcus tapped her shoulder. "Look, over there," he whispered, pointing to a distant hill where a small herd of zombies shuffled in unison, their heads tilted to the sky. "Why are they just standing there?" Riley muttered, narrowing her eyes. Before Marcus could answer, Carl's voice crackled over the intercom. "Something's spooking them. They're acting weird. Stay alert." The jeep slowed down as the rest of the caravan did the same. The tourists murmured nervously, their excitement giving way to unease. Riley felt her stomach tighten. This was supposed to be a controlled environment, yet the behavior of the zombies hinted at something far more unpredictable. A low rumble echoed across the plains, shaking the ground beneath them. The zombies, who had been standing still, suddenly snapped to attention and bolted in the opposite direction, a speed that no one expected. "What the hell?" Marcus blurted, his camera forgotten in his hands. Carl grabbed the radio, his face pale. "Sector Z Control, do you copy? We've got abnormal activity. What's causing the..." Before he could finish, the ground cracked, sending a tremor through the jeep. A massive section of the electric fence collapsed under the force of the quake, its metal beams twisted and sparking. A wave of panic surged through the tourists. "Get us out of here," someone screamed. But it was too late. The breach had opened, and dozens of zombies from a nearby containment area surged through the gap, drawn by the sudden influx of movement. The tourists' once safe vantage point had become a death trap. Carl slammed the jeep into reverse, but the wave of undead was already upon them. The other vehicles in the caravan scrambled to move, but in the chaos, one of the jeeps overturned, sending its passengers tumbling onto the ground. Riley's instincts kicked in. "We need to move," she shouted, grabbing Marcus by the arm. "We're sitting ducks here." Carl turned to them, his voice shaky. "Stay in the jeep. The fences will. The fences are down." Riley interrupted, her eyes wide with terror. "We can't stay here." The zombies closed in, their guttural moans filling the air as they descended upon the fallen jeep. Riley watched in horror as the tourists inside were dragged into the horde, their screams drowned by the snarling of the undead. Riley leaped from the vehicle, her heart pounding. "Marcus, run." Marcus hesitated for a split second, his camera still slung around his neck. Then, with a burst of adrenaline, he jumped out after her. The two of them sprinted toward a nearby thicket of trees, hoping to use the foliage as cover. Behind them, Carl wrestled with the jeep, trying to maneuver it out of the oncoming swarm. The park, once a symbol of cutting-edge entertainment, had become a battlefield. Riley and Marcus weaved through the trees, their breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The sounds of growling and moaning filled the air behind them, but they didn't dare look back. They could only run. "We need to find shelter," Marcus wheezed, his face pale with fear. "There." Riley pointed to an old maintenance shed nestled among the trees. It was small, but it was their only option. They sprinted toward the building, flinging the door open and slamming it shut behind them. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of oil. The dim light filtering through the cracks in the walls barely illuminated the space, but it was enough to see that the shed hadn't been used in years. As they sprinted toward the distant lights of the control tower, Riley couldn't help but wonder, had the park's creators known this would happen? Had they designed this chaos for their own amusement? Or had the undead simply found a way to reclaim their freedom? One thing was certain, the zombie safari park was no longer a thrill-seeker's paradise. It was a death trap. And Riley and Marcus were running out of time. Riley leaned against the door, her chest heaving. "We need to stay quiet. They'll follow the noise." Marcus nodded, pressing his ear against the wall. Outside, the growls of the zombies grew louder, closer. The shed wouldn't hold for long. "There has to be a way out of here," Riley whispered, scanning the room for anything useful. In the corner, she spotted an old toolbox. She rushed over and rummaged through it, pulling out a wrench, some wires, and a roll of duct tape. "Can you fix anything with this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus shook his head. "Not enough. We're stuck." The door rattled as a zombie slammed against it, snarling and clawing at the wood. The flimsy structure creaked under the assault, and Riley knew they didn't have much time. She looked around frantically, then spotted a small hatch in the ceiling, a ventilation shaft. It was narrow, but it might just be big enough for them to crawl through. "Up there," she pointed. "It's our only chance." Marcus eyed the hatch, then nodded. With his help, Riley climbed onto a stack of crates and pushed the hatch open. The shaft was dark and cramped, but it led away from the shed, away from the zombies. "You first," Riley whispered, helping Marcus up. He squeezed into the shaft, pulling himself along with a grunt. Once he was in, Riley followed, just as the door splintered under the force of the zombies outside. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, the sound of snarling and banging fading behind them. The air was thick with dust, and every movement sent a cloud of particles into the air, making it hard to breathe. But they kept going, inching forward until they reached the end of the shaft. Riley kicked at the hatch, and it popped open, spilling them onto the ground outside. They tumbled onto the dirt, gasping for breath. "We made it," Marcus panted, his face streaked with sweat and dirt. But Riley wasn't so sure. The sun had set, and in the distance, she could hear the unmistakable sound of more zombies. The park was overrun, and they were far from safe. "We need to get to the main control tower," Riley said, pulling Marcus to his feet. "If we can shut down the park's systems, we can stop them from spreading beyond the fences." Marcus nodded, determination in his eyes. They had survived this long. Now they had to finish it.